The U.S. did not invade. They did this operation, and they extracted Maduro, and there was no American casualties. I mean, that was for the U.S. It was brilliant. Venezuela never produced more than 3.4 million barrels a day in the best conditions.
Venezuelan oil could lead to petrol or gas at the pump costing $1 per gallon. And they call this the petrol reset. If Nicolás Maduro is fair game, is Ayatollah Khamenei in Iran also fair game?
That's it.
What about Vladimir Putin?
Same thing.
What about Xi Jinping?
Same thing.
In one of our conversations, you said that Donald Trump has put the last nail in the coffin of the post-World War II order. Welcome to FO Talks. With me is Leonardo Vivas again. He is a regular author at Fair Observer. He has spoken a lot about Venezuela. He is from Venezuela. He is an academic. He has been a human rights campaigner. He is a public intellectual. And today, without further ado, we are going to speak about a very important topic. Donald Trump has nabbed Nicolás Maduro. What happens now? So, Leo, what happened on January 3rd, 2026? The year seems to have got off to a flying start.
Yes, I think it was a move very well executed by the military, by the U.S. military forces, to extract Maduro from Venezuela and bring him to face a court in New York with his wife. Let us remember that there had been accusations, formal accusations, and there had been a price put on his head, and a list of members of the Maduro government were on that list. But so he was taken, and immediately there was a recomposition in the government in Venezuela in agreement with the U.S. administration. So clearly there had been talks before, and we don't know exactly who were on those talks, but at least most probably the current president, Delcy Rodriguez, and her brother, Jorge Rodriguez, who is the president of the National Assembly, and he has been part of all the negotiations and conversations with the U.S., with the opposition in Qatar, in the last 8 to 10 years. So he is, perhaps one of the operators more qualified and experienced in dealing with the U.S. So yeah,
one hears that the U.S. government spent $100 million paying off top members of the Maduro regime. Paint us a picture. Howsoever imperfect, because we are not in possession of complete information, as to what exactly happened in the corridors of power in Caracas, Venezuela.
Well, it's very difficult to say. Moscow says that there were traitors and that they know who they are, and what I think they're saying that because all the defense systems failed, and now they're accusing Venezuelans of not being able to put them to work. But it's very difficult exactly to know. The question is that at this point in time, or at that point in time, end of December, beginning of this year, Maduro had become a liability for both the regime, or the elite, the dominant elite in Venezuela, and for the U.S. And they had been prepared for this. There had been conversations between Maduro and Trump, where Trump told him to abandon power, and he would be able to leave to wherever he chose, or he could go. But he rejected all those offers, or that final offer, and continued kind of to challenge the Trump administration, perhaps believing that, as in many other occasions, Trump was bluffing, and he was dead wrong.
And so it turns out that Trump wasn't bluffing this time around.
No, and it makes sense because, I mean, all that fleet, that mobilization, and putting to work again an airport and a base in Puerto Rico, and mobilizing close to 8,000 men in the different ships, and was a huge mobilization. And they had started attacking some small vessels, allegedly because they were
smuggling drugs.
Having drugs, and then just before that, there was an attack in an airport in western Venezuela, near the border with Colombia, which where allegedly there was a lab for processing cocaine and producing cocaine. So it would have been. It was, I think, that it would have been a problem for Trump to stop it there and just leave it like that and just let them go as they had done in the past.
You've just said Nicolás Maduro had become a liability. And it seems from your words and from the reading I have come across that he had lost support of his inner coterie. He also was saying, "Come and get me," and taunting Trump. Was this a case of convenience for all sides concerned? It was important for Trump to show he had a victory in South America. After all, we now have the Trump corollary to the Donroe Doctrine in the national security strategy. This is also now called the Donroe Doctrine. So Donald Trump, US President Donald Trump, gets to look big and strong and powerful and secure a big win. And of course, Maduro's inner circle now can make a deal with the US, sell some oil on the market, and get rid of its liability. It's a win-win for everyone concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, not everyone, because there is one part here which has been affected, dramatically, and that is Cuba, because Cuba was essential in bringing Maduro as president when Chavez passed away. Because at that time, the most prominent leader in Chavismo was the second in command, Diosdado Cabello. But Chavez, before he died, he chose Maduro, and the reason is, to an important extent, is because he was supported by Cuba. Let's remember that his security detail in Caracas and that went with him everywhere were Cubans.
And it is Cubans who died in this operation, not Venezuelans mainly.
Venezuelans died as well, but there were 32 military and other security forces from Cuba that died that very night or early morning.
Mm-hmm. So, so not everyone's a winner. The Cubans are the big losers. Let's talk about the senior members of the regime. And you say that it had become a matter of survival or a matter of convenience. Maduro had become a liability. So now the senior members of the regime have got rid of Maduro. They are the new sister and brother duo. They are in power. My question to you is, will they survive?
Well, it's difficult to say because at this moment they are a pawn in Trump's way of dealing with South America, and a very important pawn. First, because the U.S. learned from other wars, from the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan. They learned that things could go bad after intervention, and despite the fact that Venezuela is not like those two countries, Venezuela has an experience, had 40 years of democracy before Chavez, and even during a period of Chavez, there was democratic processes going on. But there is a risk because the way they control the whole country, every single institution or pillar of power, just breaking that could lead to chaos. And I think they decided to try to dismantle the regime from within. I think that is their plan, because that would allow them to Venezuela, coming back to fulfill its role in providing cheap oil and in bringing more oil to the market, especially to the U.S., which has a number of installations and refineries that are totally adequate to process the main type of oil that predominates in Venezuela, which is heavy oil.
Heavy crude.
Heavy crude, yeah.
Which is which takes a lot of money to extract, and B, it takes a special kind of refinery to refine.
Yeah, because it has a lot of sulfur, and you have to get rid of that when you do the refining. And in order to put the oil in the pipelines and make it flow, you have to inject a number of substances to follow. And there are a couple of technologies, some of which were invented in Venezuela, but other, there is a number of companies in the U.S. that produce this sort of materials or components that help dilute the oil, this heavy oil, and make it flow through the pipelines.
Let's talk about Venezuela itself. We'll come back to oil in a second. Many analysts think Venezuela is a failed state. There is a lack of electricity, food, and water. Schools are open 2 days a week, and teachers get $1 per month. About 60% of Venezuelan physicians have left the country, and 50% of nurses have fled. As you've told me, 8 million people fled Venezuela. About a quarter, or 20 to 25% of the population, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
The legal system has collapsed. How does the new regime carry on? And let's say if it falls, how do you rebuild the country?
Well, that is exactly the problem. That's the main conundrum here facing Venezuela, because it is going to be very difficult for this elite, which has been accustomed to rule the country according to their own rules, self-imposed rules, and which has been characterized by a huge corruption at all levels. It's kind of the you know the perfect world for corruption.
I mean, it's the Caudillo model. It's the Caudillo model of governance, wherein the strong man rules, and it's arbitrary. And yes, you could be honest for a wee bit, but soon power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
But recently, 2 days ago, Switzerland froze the deposits of at least close to 30 important Venezuelans, some of which are part of the regime and some of which are in exile or are living in other places, like in Rome or, all over the world. And so it's very difficult for this magic to come about and rebuild from within. It's hard because look, today one of the main issues that is on the table is freeing the political prisoners. We're talking about around a December count. You were talking about 1,100 political prisoners, and the question is that these prisoners, some belong to different parts of the regime. Some belong to Diosdado, some belong to the Rodriguez brothers, some belong to this other governor here or there. So it's been difficult to free these prisoners, despite the pressure from the U.S. because the entanglements, and this is something that could have happened easily, in 3-4 days, and boom, you have, and it would be a huge gesture, has become a problem for them because they haven't been able to do to do their work, to do what they have been asked for, and now you still have only of those 1,100, only less than 300 have been freed. So that just give you an example. So now think about creating the conditions for a prosperous oil industry to come back to Venezuela. I mean, that is, look, most of the refineries are just collapsed. Venezuela and does not produce any gasoline. It has to import gasoline. It was importing gasoline from Iran at some point. So most of what is the state company's production is at a minimum. Approximately,
it is years of underinvestment, corruption, no rule of law, and basically even the infrastructure has rotted away. You told me that even the pipes from the rigs, they are in need of repair. So everything is in disarray.
Look, production of oil has, several phases. The first is exploration. You do, the first, which is you don't have to go, you don't have to drill. But then when like in the case of Venezuela, that you have all these reserves, then you have to drill to make sure that what your hypothesis on your reserve is real, and then when you've done the exploration, then you do the exploitation. You go, you drill, and you put into a pipeline, and then it goes to refineries or goes directly abroad. So, and all that system, and there is another part here, which is that many of the companies that had come to Venezuela under joint venture agreements, most of them were expropriated with no compensation. And so there is a list of companies that are waiting to be paid what they are owed. And what is going to be the rationale if like they say, production could recover in 2 or 3 years? Are they going to pay first, these companies? I mean, there is, and then you have a problem of property rights, because those companies that experience that, they'll got to say, no, wait a minute. We're not going to go back to Venezuela, running the risk that anytime this new dictator or whatever is going to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, no, you're going to be expropriated." I mean, it's a huge risk. The president of Chevron said Venezuela is what was the word he used?
Uninvestable.
Uninvestable. So in order to make Venezuela investable again, you have to produce a number of changes, not only legal changes. You need electricity, because without electricity you can't pump, you can't do, produce oil, and you have to have water, and you have to have other means of infrastructure. You have to have roads, and you have to have workers, and a lot of Chavez fired 20,000 Venezuelan executives from the company, and then substituted them with just
cronies.
Yeah, cronies, and that's one of the reasons why there has been so much corruption, because people go there and they're not thinking of how to, make things better, or produce in better conditions and have, safety conditions and take care of the environment. No. The important thing is getting as much as you can for your personal,
purse, wallet.
Yeah.
Treasure, whatever you want to call it. And I'm glad you mentioned oil, because there is thinking among some Republican circles, and not all, and I'm in Washington, D.C. right now, so I get to hear a lot of that the Venezuelan oil could lead to petrol or gas at the pump costing $1 per gallon. And they call this the petrol reset. Why? Because they say there are 303 billion barrels of oil in Venezuela, the largest known reserves. South Texas has the ability to refine this oil. Should America be able to drill, baby drill, and get this oil to South Texas, that would lower the price of oil. That would give a huge supply side shock in a good way. So maybe not a shock, supply side boost. And that would lead to lower energy costs, which would lead to lower inflationary pressures. And at the same time, Venezuela also has coltan, which Hugo Chavez, Nicolás Maduro's predecessor, the man who ended democracy in Venezuela, the original caudillo. Actually, to be fair, he did win his first election, but after that, he increasingly became authoritarian. But Hugo Chavez called coltan blue gold. And Venezuela has other strategic minerals. And if they can get Venezuela working again, then a lot of reshoring could happen in Venezuela. A lot of labor from Latin America could end up in Venezuela, and Venezuela could be an alternative to Mexico. What do you say to this line of thinking, to this idea of a petrol reset, of getting coltan, of having Venezuelans return and then others come and making Venezuela a manufacturing hub? How far do you think this thinking could succeed?
Well, That is, if you look at the numbers and you look at the conditions, that is something that could be achievable. The question is Delcy and her regime going to be the one who allows this to happen? And I don't think they'll be able to do it. I mean, they're gonna be getting to facing so many obstacles, internal obstacles, infrastructure obstacles. Look, if you want investment to come back, apart from paying, I mean, just to pay the debt, Venezuela has no relations with the IMF since 2006. Venezuela doesn't even provide the IMF the data, the economic data about economic variables.
Quick question. Does Venezuela even collect economic data today?
Well, we don't know because if they collect it, they don't publish it. So
Because we are talking about state collapse. We are talking about teachers getting paid $1 a month. We are talking about all sorts of professionals fleeing.
And that's the same case of the central bank.
Exactly.
The central bank was dismantled, and probably we don't know. Perhaps they do, but they don't publish inflation, for instance, data about inflation. They haven't published that for 5 or 6 years, and if you want to restructure your debt, I mean, the very thing the IMF is going to say, okay, show me the numbers. And so if they haven't done it so far, who says that they're going to do it? And the list of things, the list of to-dos in order to get to certain conditions that would allow investment massively coming back is very large, very big. And then you have another thing, is that Venezuela never produced more than 3.4 million barrels a day in the best conditions, under the best conditions, where you had a very fine company, official company, and you had great joint ventures with a number of companies all over the world. And at the best point, it was 3.4. So, I mean, you could produce more than that and produce 4 or 5. And I remember in the 90s, the plan was to produce 4 and then 6 million barrels a day. That was the plan. And of course, Chavez, destroyed all that, and after that, even Maduro made it even worse. So, in order to get there, you have so many things to do that it's very unlikely that the present administration ruling Venezuela now, which is Delcy and Diosdado and the other Rodriguez, and that they will be able to do it. I mean, it's kind of a reflex, the famous tale about a how do you call this animal that bites and poisons? Goes,
Scorpion.
The scorpion. He wants to cross a river, and then he went at the middle of the river crossing. He bites the animal, and the animal said, "Why do you do it?" And
you promised not to do it. He said, "It's in my nature."
It's in my nature. So it's in the nature of them. Look, they just created a committee. A committee for peace and kind of peace and reconciliation. And if you look at the names, the people that are in that commission were the same people that maybe 4 or 5 months ago met with the daughter of President-elect Edmundo González Urrutia and told her either he, resigns at what he was elected, or your husband will never leave the prison. And those same people are the ones that are part of that commission. So, it's in their nature. It's very hard. And maybe even if Delcy and her brother want to, bring kind of an economic revolution and an institutional revolution, the entire working of the system is against it. It's because it's in its nature.
Understood. So let's move to what people are calling regime alteration, not regime change. That what Donald Trump and his administration have achieved is alter the regime, do a deal, inexpensive in blood and treasure, largely inexpensive, get Nicolás Maduro out, and get Delcy Rodriguez and Venezuela out of the pocket of China and Russia and into the pocket of America. Now they answer to Washington, D.C., not to Beijing or to Moscow. What would you say to this line of thinking?
Well, I would say that it's partially true. I mean, that part of the bargain is happening, starting with Cuba, which, as we spoke before, has been the most affected, because Cuba used to get 1 million barrels a day. I'm sorry, 100,000 barrels per day, almost free of charge.
Yeah, and in return they send their doctors over and their soldiers over.
And they would sell this, oil on the free market and get some deals and get very good deals. In any case, that stopped, and now Trump put pressure on Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, and told her, you do not sell oil to Cuba. So Cuba's not even getting oil from Mexico. So
no Venezuelan oil and no Mexican oil now.
Yeah. Well, we don't know if Russia's going to provide some oil. They might. But Russia, lost its connections, and most of the armament that was bought in Venezuela was from Russia or from China, and most of that has been partially non-operational because of problems of maintenance, because of lack of training, and I think the Russians have a point there in the fact that these systems were not handled adequately. But the other thing is that it was not only a matter of the equipment; it's a matter of the political things that we're doing there. And China, China, they are very patient. They never went in Venezuela for the political. They were mostly for the economics, but it was very bad for them because Russia got all the debt paid. It was paid back by Venezuela, but the Chinese debt, not the same. It has been paid, but still there is a remnant of 30-40% of the debt that hasn't been paid. So there are very
probably will never be paid.
And maybe if there is a significant political change, maybe they will be paid, and they will be because at this moment the U.S. has said that Russian companies, oil companies, could come to Venezuela, and that is because of the good relations with Putin. and they haven't said that the Chinese oil companies are banned. No, they haven't said that. So but of course, it's the most probable scenario is that you'll have a larger portion of American and Western companies coming to Venezuela. So politically, I do think that they have severed many of these connections with China and Russia and Iran and Cuba. And in a sense, they are administering their new foreign policy, their new policy
So
for the
basically, the
Americas.
Trump corollary of the national
Yeah,
of the Monroe Doctrine,
yeah,
which they've written about in the national
it's
security strategy, which we now call Donroe Doctrine, that is in implementation,
in the implementation phase.
and
Yeah.
Latin America is very much under American arc of influence, and Russia, China, Iran are very much unwelcome in the Western Hemisphere.
Well, not yet. I would say because countries like Argentina, which, as you know, have a very close relationship with the U.S. with Trump. In the case of Milei, they still have important deals with China, and they haven't stopped those deals. Or Brazil has important deals with China, and they're not stopping those deals.
Brazil
Look,
is where you
look,
have
look. When
BYD selling more than Tesla now.
yeah, and when the Chinese put tariffs on soybean to U.S., which is one of the main producers of soybean in the world. So the Chinese said, "Oh, not my problem. I'll buy the Brazilians." So the Brazilians have been favored by these tariffs that Trump put on China. So, and that trend might continue. And same case with other countries that have their deals, even Chile or other countries. So that's going to be more difficult to stop.
So economic relations with China will continue because Latin America produces commodities. China
Right.
has a huge hunger for commodities. So supply from Latin America, demand from China. That's
That will
as
continue.
old as time. Trade will carry on. Economic ties will continue. But no
Except
other
for
power will have
except,
geopolitical heft in Latin America.
except for those areas which are critical for geopolitical reasons, namely oil, and that's why Venezuela plays this new role, or the Trump administration wants Venezuela to play that role, or rare earth minerals like in Bolivia or in other places, or control of ports, those kind of things,
Or the
like
Panama Canal.
the Panama Canal. So but Venezuela is, I would say, the most important chapter in that policy if it works.
Got it. Now,
The question is that we don't know if it's going to work, and that is where the opportunities for the Venezuelan opposition or democratic forces emerges.
So let's talk about the opposition. The lady who
Maria Corina Machado.
Maria Corina Machado, correct?
Yeah.
So Maria Corina Machado, she is charismatic. She's a very good campaigner. She's presented her Nobel Prize to Donald Trump, to U.S. President Donald Trump. He's very pleased. She is obviously networking in Washington, lobbying in Washington on Capitol Hill, not just the White House. What happens to her? What happens to the prospect of a democratic Venezuela?
Well, there are two scenarios. I would say the best case scenario for her. And which means when I say her, I mean the bulk of Venezuelan democratic forces, because she is the main leader of let's say the bulk, the most important part of democratic forces. You have others that do not agree entirely with her, but those are very, I would say, have a very small leverage and force today. So best case scenario would be that Delcy Rodriguez and her brother, they advance in cleaning the mess, doing, the dirty work, which most probably she and President-elect Edmundo González Urrutia would not have been able to do without, the risk of chaos, of the risk of, military events or a number of things that could have gone wrong. Because remember, they control every single pillar of power. And in order to dismantle all this huge structure, it's going to take time. It's going to take, political leverage, which she, at the moment, doesn't have. As time goes by and things changes and Delcy, starts to hit the wall, then there might be the moment where there is the transition to democracy starts.
So then there might be an opening for Maria Corina Machado.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you why. And that's what, that's the variable that people do not consider a lot, because people just tend to think in terms of the geopolitics of it all. The question is the Venezuelans, the people. I mean, these people massively voted for Edmundo González, who was put there because she couldn't run. And he got 70% of the votes. And that does not consider the diaspora, which would, the difference would have been 19% to 10% if they had been able, allowed to vote. So we don't know. Things are happening in Venezuela very slowly. Look, every time or many times a political prisoner is freed, when you go to the town where this person lived, it's like a collective party. People celebrate. People go to the street to celebrate. Or those that haven't been freed, well, you have people, students and organizations, human rights organizations, putting pressure for them to be freed. And you've had, and this is starting, or changes in some parts, slight changes in freedom of speech. Now people in the radio are saying things that they couldn't say 2 months ago. Two months ago, you could not talk about the Nobel Prize.
So the regime's grip on power is not as vice-like as it was.
No, because they have to allow for breathing room. For them, it's breathing room, but for the democratic forces, it's a way in to get in the political process and do their work. So we don't know how that is going to work out, but you will have that, and that will be a very important variable in the months to come.
Leo, your old friend Rory Stewart, who is a British politician, or was a British politician, he ran to be Prime Minister, Conservative Party.
Yeah, he was my boss.
And minister, your ex-boss. He now runs a podcast called The Rest is Politics, the most successful podcast in the UK. Now, Rory thinks Trump's action against Venezuela is a breach of international law. He has said that Trump's action or American action violates Venezuela's national sovereignty. You disagree with him. You make the point about popular sovereignty. Please expand.
Well, look, nowadays, let's say after Second World War, the trend or the understanding of sovereignty has been put on the state, on the nation state and its government. But if you look at the origins of sovereignty started with who represented more the nation. And, the monarchs were the representation of the powers that be at that time. And then empires became also expression of sovereignty. And when you had independence, take the case of Latin America. Most Latin American countries that gained independence were republics, and that the idea was to have sovereignty of the people, of the nation, of the people, not just because there was the link with Spain or Portugal was cut, but also because you had expressed that legitimacy came from the people, from the nation, and its social forces. And this, in the 20th century, became, the fight for democracy in Latin America. And so when you say now, where does that sovereignty lie? In the regime, in Maduro? Is the sovereignty this repressive government, or does it lie on the people that have been the victims of his rule? And to me, you have the two, but the one that counts is the one of the people, because sovereignty of a dictatorship, for me, has little value. It's like, Iran, what they have been doing and killing. I don't know how many thousands, depends the count, of people killed in the street.
Let's develop this idea further. So, if Nicolás Maduro is fair game, is Ayatollah Khamenei in Iran also fair game?
That's it. Yeah, it's and to my mind, that I do not agree with that. I'm sorry, but I think that
you do not agree with Rory Stewart. Let's make it clear.
No. Okay. Oh, look, there is a component there, and
I will be sure to send Rory your interview.
Yeah. So that is a component. So you might say, okay, let's have no violations of territory.
Yeah.
That would be, the best thing, only if the way people are ruled in those territories correspond to the sovereignty of the nation, of the people in that.
So let's take this. So Nicolás Maduro is fair game. Ayatollah Khamenei is fair game. What about Vladimir Putin? Where do we?
Same thing.
What about Xi Jinping?
Same thing.
So
the difference is
that means there are no limits then now to foreign policy. If you're going to go after everybody, it could end up with nuclear war.
No, the question is that you have the other restrictions in the world, and the restrictions today are different to the ones of the post-Second World War.
Understood.
The restrictions today are on the superpowers themselves, and nobody is going to try to invade China, because it would be stupidity to invade China or
Russia,
or invade Russia. Putin did it because he could, and that is exactly the moment when he invaded Ukraine, when the system cracked, the
So
system that was
let me
built in
stop
a,
you. Let me stop you right there because we've talked about it, and a lot of in one of our conversations, you said that Donald Trump has put the last nail in the coffin of the post-World War II order, and but you have said many times that this had been decaying for a while, and Vladimir Putin put the first nail in the coffin of this order or this world on February 24, 2022. So, what happens now? Paint us a picture of the world to come.
well, we don't know. It's in the making.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the making. The question is that Putin was pretty smart because he did it, step by step. He invaded Georgia. He got Crimea. Small things. People would, who's Georgia? What is Crimea? People don't even remember that. That was important for Russia, but people couldn't care less about Crimea. And what did the Obama administration do? They just put some minor sanctions, and expecting that would be it. But then Russia went into Ukraine, which is a large nation, and Crimea and Ukraine put up a fight.
Mm-hmm.
Not only stopped the invasion at a certain, but put up a fight and have been killing, Russian soldiers, like flies. I don't know how many Russian soldiers have been killed, but the name
But
is
now, as we
astronomical.
speak,
The number is astronomical.
yeah, but as we speak, Leo, Ukraine has run out of men. Ukraine has run out of money, and Ukraine has run out of material. I mean, materiel. I mean munitions, weapons,
Yeah.
etc. And Kiev has no electricity, and Kiev is emptying out. So yes, Ukrainians did fight hard, innovated a lot, were brave, all of that. But now the fat lady is starting to sing.
Well, I don't have the details about the
Yeah.
war in Ukraine too, but I don't see Russia, taking Kyiv. I don't see
Mm.
Russia taking. They haven't been able to take the Donbass.
Mhm.
My God. And that is why in the negotiations, the Trump administration is telling Ukraine, oh, accept territories that haven't been taken by Russia, and you'll have peace. And Ukraine has said, no, if they haven't been won in a war, we won't let go. And that's one of the questions why this moment of discussions that they're having finally between the three will lead to no result, because Russia will say we want the Donbass, because Putin has to show the Russians that he won something.
Mm-hmm.
And at least he can say, all those territories of the Donbass that I declare that were ours, they are now ours. But if he doesn't get that, what does he get? He gets, something incomplete, and he'll pay the price, and he knows that. And I think that is the reason why there has been no peace agreement. We don't know.
Yeah, but let's come back to the world order and not get dragged into the details. Yes, Russia couldn't take Kiev, but in this world order that Vladimir Putin has shattered, Donald Trump has now put a final nail in the coffin. Elaborate on that and draw out some scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he has, and I think the best example is Venezuela, because for different reasons. First, because the way he did it, he did not invade Venezuela. Look, I had incredible discussions with my friends here in the U.S. My people mostly from the Democratic Party,
Yeah,
who
I mean,
said,
you are in Boston, where you have
yeah,
Harvard and
yeah,
MIT and all these
yeah,
great
and
institutions. It's a blue city.
it's a bit what Rory has been arguing,
Hmm.
and the question is that the U.S. did not invade. They did this operation, and they extracted Maduro, and there was no American casualties. I mean, that
Hmm.
was for the U.S. It was brilliant. Of
Hmm.
course, there were casualties in Venezuela too. There
Yeah.
were 100 people that died between military and civilians. So you did have casualties in this extraction, or whatever you want to call it. The question is that once that is done, in the way it was done, it
Hmm.
proved a number of things. Proved, you know, how the things that this army proposes to do, they do it, and that they don't create a great problem to the country, to the administration. So,
Hmm.
in military terms, as said, there are some other things that haven't been discussed. Like, there was this discussion recently, I think yesterday, about an armament, presumably this come be later. That was the way Trump called it, and but apparently there was something sonic that
Hmm.
was used. It was similar to what was used in Cuba that affected American diplomats and diplomats from other countries, and
Hmm.
which one of the reasons that made the U.S. Go against have a harder line against Cuba. And the question is that apparently this had been invented by a company, and they bought it, and now they're using it. And apparently, because there have been different, it has been not documented, but there have been people talking about it.
Hmm.
Soldiers, people who were there, and that this affected, especially people, but also affected armament.
I see.
So in a way, you have that, and they have told the Europe, now you're on your own.
Hmm.
So you better, go and arm yourselves. And if you look at what the different countries have been doing, they have been, investing more in armament and trying to, make European armies stronger, or
Hmm.
maybe eventually creating a European army
Hmm.
different to NATO.
So,
Which was
in a nutshell, a more fragmented world, a world where um, might is right will operate to a greater degree, in a world where popular sovereignty increasingly might take primacy over national sovereignty, and in a world where what we've seen in Venezuela is an indicator, is a harbinger of things to come. The Trump corollary of the Monroe Doctrine, the Donroe Doctrine, will see America exercise geopolitical primacy over the Western Hemisphere.
look. Uh, it's not only the sheer weight of power.
Hmm.
Uh, it's also what institutions fail to do. Look, when Maduro lost the election in 2024, July 28,
Hmm.
2024, what was the response in Latin America? Oh, you had Lula that they never accepted Maduro as a legitimate
Hmm.
president, but apart from that, they did nothing. Look, there was a number of people who asked for asylum, and they went to the Argentinian embassy, and the government attacked the embassy, and they had no electricity, no water. They stayed for more than a year in that embassy until they were extracted. And there was an operation. Nobody knows what happened, but most probably the U.S. was involved. But what did the OAS do? I mean, when
OAS, too, for our listeners, just is the Organization of American States.
Of American States. When in 2009, a president in Honduras was taken from his bed and with his pajamas was brought to Costa Rica, there was an immediate meeting of the Organization of American States, and they put sanctions on Honduras president at the time. And in question of 2 years, you had new elections. And lately, the last president was the wife of president that was deposed at the time. So at that time, until then, there was something that maybe might work a little bit. But now what happened? What does the Security Council mean when you have the invasion of Ukraine and the perpetrator is part of the Security Council, and its ally China abstains when you have the voting of the General Assembly against Russia, and China, which is another member of the Security Council, abstains. So what sort of institutions are those that are unable to act? Look, in early 20th, 21st century, you had the Millennium Development Goals. And these were ideas that were put together by United Nations. And a large number of countries took these ideas as an inspiration. And they started to follow many of these goals in their policies in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America. Then these Millennium Development Goals where there was a second generation of Sustainable Development Goals. And what's that happened to that? Nothing. I mean, people just don't talk about them anymore. Because it is like, when a car loses its, it stops because it has no gas. It seems I see as a car that you start stopping because it has no more.
So the rules-based order Rory Stewart talks about and the passing of which he bemoans. The sad thing is it became a car, very fancy car, big words, SDGs, UN, yada yada, but it became a car with no gas, and it had run out of gas, so something had to fill the vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. That, in essence, is your argument. It's not just about people like Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump seizing power. It's about institutions crumbling and abdicating power and responsibility.
Yeah, or even the International Criminal Court. The International Criminal Court did, when Putin, they declared that he was a criminal of war, or Netanyahu, they said, but they did it for political reasons. They had been investigating Venezuela for decades, and what did they do? Oh, we're going to send a mission. Oh, this takes, I know that international law takes time, and international law takes more time. But you did have some of the people that were the perpetrators in the former Yugoslavia brought to justice, and some of them died in prison. So Milosevic, and others were tried, were taken to justice. And what is happening now? What is happening? No, that all those forces that were part of the advancement of mankind kind of stopped. the car that loses steam, the car that loses
That runs
its
out of
gas.
gas or petrol.
It runs out of gas. And I think the international system ran out of gas. And of course, you have the Putins of this world and the Trumps of the world that are filling the void.
On that note, Leonardo Vivas, Leo Vivas, always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for your time. We'll have you back. Those of you who've liked this discussion, share it with your friends. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are a non-profit. We are not owned by billionaires or funded by governments. So thank you very much for watching, and see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Atul. Great pleasure to be with you and your audience.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.